I'll pay you $2 million if you can prepare authentic Peking duck. Right now, in this kitchen. The words hung in the air of Chen's bistro like a challenge wrapped in silk and barbed wire. Marcus Chen, tech mogul and venture capitalist, leaned back in his chair with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never heard the word no mean anything permanent. His Patek Philippe caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, scattering tiny rainbows across the white tablecloth. Around him sat four others, a German industrialist, a Dubai real estate magnate, a Sao Paulo investment banker, and a London hedge fund manager. They'd flown in for a private equity summit, and lunch had devolved into a competition of one-upmanship and impossible dares. Maya Richardson stood 3 feet from their table, order pad in hand, her posture straight despite 12 hours into a double shift. At 24, she'd learned to keep her face neutral during moments like these. Moments when wealthy diners treated the restaurant like their personal theater. Her black slacks and white button-down were crisp despite the lunch rush, her natural hair pulled back in a neat bun. The lunchtime crowd of about 40 diners had gone quiet, that particular restaurant silence that descends when everyone pretends not to listen while listening intently. Peking duck, Marcus repeated, pulling out his phone and showing her a photo from what looked like a high-end culinary magazine. The real thing, not the garbage they serve at these fusion places. Authentic Beijing style with the pancakes, the sauce, the crispy skin that shatters like glass. You know what that is, right? The question carried that particular tone, not quite mockery, but edged with assumption. His companions chuckled, a low rumble of expensive dental work and private school education. I know what Peking duck is, Maya said quietly, her voice carrying clearly in the hushed room. And I know this restaurant doesn't have it on the menu. $2 million. The Dubai magnate, Rashid Al-Kawari, interjected, his voice booming with entertainment. Marcus, you're serious? For a duck. For the principal, Marcus said, not taking his eyes off Maya. I'm tired of mediocre Chinese food in America. Everyone claims authenticity, but it's all sweet and sour garbage. I want the real thing, the kind my grandmother made in Beijing. He gestured vaguely at Maya. If anyone here can actually make it properly, I'll pay $2 million, cash, today. The German industrialist Klaus Hoffmann laughed, a sharp, barking sound. Marcus, be reasonable. This is a American bistro. You think they even have the right duck? The right oven? That's my point exactly, Marcus said. They can't do it. Nobody here can. American restaurants slap Chinese on the sign and serve orange chicken. It's insulting. Maya felt the weight of 40 pairs of eyes. Phones were emerging from pockets and purses. In 2024, every moment was potentially viral, every confrontation a possible TikTok sensation. She could see the angles already: wealthy tech bro humiliates service worker, or maybe service worker school's arrogant billionaire. The narrative would write itself depending on what happened next. You're right that we don't have it on the menu, Maya said carefully. But you're wrong about several things. The table went quiet. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Wrong? Enlighten me. Maya met his gaze directly. You're wrong that nobody here can make it. You're wrong that American restaurants can't serve authentic Chinese cuisine. And you're wrong to assume my abilities based on my current position. Oh. Rashid leaned forward, intrigued now rather than merely amused. And why is that? Because I've made Peking duck. Many times. I studied at the Beijing Culinary Institute for 2 years. I worked at Quanjude in Beijing for 8 months. I can make it properly. The silence deepened. Someone's fork clinked against a plate. Marcus's expression shifted from amusement to something harder to read. Skepticism mixed with curiosity. You're telling me, he said slowly, that you, a waitress at a mid-range American bistro, can prepare proper Peking duck? The way it's done in Beijing. I'm telling you I can prepare it the way Master Chef Wang Yonghua taught me to prepare it. He's been making it for 43 years. I assume that's authentic enough for you. The London hedge fund manager, James Whitmore, whistled low. Well, this got interesting. Klaus pulled out his phone. Wang Yonghua? Let me check. Oh, Oh my, Marcus, he's actually famous. Third-generation master at Quanjude. If she really trained under him. She didn't, Marcus said flatly. No offense, but that's ridiculous. Those programs cost a fortune and the masters don't just teach anyone. Why would someone with that training be working as a waitress? It was a fair question superficially, but it carried assumptions about why people worked certain jobs, about what paths life forced people down, about who deserved to be believed. Maya felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd had 1,000 times. In college when professors were surprised by her Mandarin fluency, at job interviews where her resume raised eyebrows, in moments where her truth seemed too improbable for others' limited imagination. You could ask me why, she said, or you could see if I'm telling the truth. $2 million, you said. Now wait, Marcus started. Do you have $2 million liquid? Maya interrupted. Because if you're making that offer, I assume you can back it up. Unless this is just theater. The Sao Paulo banker, Carlos Mendez, laughed a genuine, delighted sound. Oh, Marcus, she's calling your bluff. I love this. Marcus's jaw tightened. Around the restaurant, phones were definitely recording now. He'd positioned himself as the worldly expert, the man with discerning taste. To back down would make him look foolish, especially with it all being documented. I have it, he said, but this restaurant doesn't have the facilities. The kitchen has everything I need, Maya said. She'd worked here for 8 months. She knew every piece of equipment, every knife, every burner. We have a convection oven that can hit 450 degrees. We have duck. Admittedly not the specific breed used in Beijing, but good quality Long Island duck. We have the ingredients for the sauce and pancakes. I can make it. This is insane, Klaus muttered, but he was smiling. Maya turned to look toward the kitchen, where she could see her manager, Tom, watching through the service window. His expression was bewildered. She caught his eye and mouthed, "Can I?" The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Tom had hired Maya knowing she was overqualified, had listened to her story, had seen her work ethic. He hesitated for only a moment before nodding slowly. Maya turned back to the table. Give me 2.5 hours. Proper Peking duck can't be rushed. The skin needs to be air-dried after the maltose coating. The oven has to be precisely calibrated. The pancakes have to be made fresh. If you want authentic, you'll wait. 2.5 hours? Rashid checked his watch. We have a meeting at 4. Cancel it, James said immediately. This I have to see. Besides, if she actually pulls this off, it's the best 2 million Marcus ever spent. If she doesn't, we get a good story. Marcus stared at Maya for a long moment. She could see him calculating the potential embarrassment if she succeeded, the vindication if she failed, the social media implications either way. Fine, he said finally. 2.5 hours. But it has to be perfect. I've had Peking duck from every major restaurant in Beijing. I know what authentic tastes like. I'm aware of the standards, Maya said calmly. She turned and walked toward the kitchen, feeling the weight of every gaze in the restaurant. Behind her, the murmuring started immediately. Excited, disbelieving, curious. Her hands weren't shaking, but her heart hammered against her ribs. $2 million. It was absurd. It was insulting. It was also an opportunity to prove something she'd been trying to prove since she came back to America 18 months ago. Tom met her at the kitchen door. Maya, what are you doing? My job, she said, plus a little extra. Can you call in Sarah to cover my tables? This is crazy. Do you really know how to? Yes. She pushed into the kitchen, where the line cooks were staring at her. I need the walk-in cleared and the convection oven preheated to 450. And I need everyone to give me space but stay available if I need ingredients. The kitchen had gone quiet. Miguel, the head chef, wiped his hands on his apron. You're serious? You can actually make Peking duck? I wouldn't have said yes if I couldn't. Maya was already pulling her hair back tighter, washing her hands with the methodical precision she'd learned in Beijing. The ritual of it, the exact temperature of the water, the count to 20 while scrubbing, the way she dried each finger individually, centered her. Miguel, do we have maltose syrup? Uh, maybe? Let me check the dry storage. I need it. Also Shaoxing wine, dark soy sauce, 5 spice powder and star anise. Plus scallions, cucumber, hoisin sauce, and check the flour situation. I'll need high-gluten flour for the pancakes. At least 2 pounds. Miguel blinked, then started moving. The other cooks followed suit, caught up in the sudden urgency. Danny, the sous chef, started pulling ingredients. Maria, who worked guard manger, began prepping vegetables without being asked. Maya closed her eyes for just a moment, steadying herself. Then she let her mind drift back, across years and miles, to a different kitchen in a different city. Beijing. 3 years earlier. August, when the humidity made the kitchen feel like a steam bath even with all the fans running. Maya had arrived at the Beijing Culinary Institute with 2 suitcases, barely enough Mandarin to order food, and a dream that everyone back home had called impractical. You want to study cooking in China? Her mother had asked, bewildered, sitting in their small Philadelphia kitchen while Maya spread brochures across the table. Baby, you can go to culinary school here. Why China? Because the flavors haunted her. Because she'd grown up eating her father's attempts at Chinese cooking. He'd learned from a roommate in college, had fallen in love with the cuisine, had passed that love to Maya through weekend cooking sessions where he'd let her stir the wok, taste the sauces, learn to balance flavors. Because when he died when she was 16, sudden, a heart attack in his sleep, no warning, food became her way of holding on to him. Because authentic technique mattered in a way she couldn't fully articulate. Because she wanted to understand, really understand, the cuisine that had shaped her palate and her memories. She'd worked 3 jobs through community college, morning shift at a coffee shop starting at 5 a.m., afternoon tutoring high school students in English and history, evening waitressing at an Italian place in Center City. She'd saved every penny, applied for every scholarship, written essays explaining why she needed to study Chinese cuisine in Beijing. Most foundations said no, often not even bothering to respond. One said yes, the Chun Foundation ironically covering half her tuition. She'd covered the rest with loans she was still paying off, would be paying off for years. Those first months in Beijing were brutal in ways she hadn't anticipated. The language barrier was worse than she'd imagined. Other students, mostly Chinese or from Asian backgrounds, looked at her with confusion or curiosity. Some were kind. Others kept their distance, unsure what to make of this American girl who spoke terrible Mandarin and had the audacity to want to master their cuisine. Her Mandarin was terrible, halting, punctuated by wild gestures and desperate dictionary consultations. She'd studied online before coming, could recognize maybe 300 characters, could stumble through basic greetings. But in the kitchen, where instructions came rapid fire and technical vocabulary was essential, she was lost. Master Chef Wang Yonghua had been the hardest on her. Your knife work is sloppy, he'd said in Mandarin on the second day, his voice sharp as the cleaver he was demonstrating with. Maya had understood maybe half the words but all of the disappointment. He'd been demonstrating how to julienne ginger, paper-thin slices, then stacked and cut into matchsticks so fine they were almost transparent. Again, and slower. Speed comes from precision, not from rushing. She'd wanted to cry. Her fingers were already cramping from the unfamiliar grip, her back aching from standing at the prep station. Instead, she'd bowed her head. Another thing she'd learned quickly, that the bow meant respect, acknowledgement, a willingness to try again, and started over, cutting the ginger into what she hoped were acceptable pieces. After class, a classmate named Lin had approached her. Lin was from Shanghai, spoke excellent English from years of international school, and had taken pity on Maya from day one. He's hard on everyone, Lin said carefully, glancing around the empty classroom. But harder on you because you're different. He wants to see if you're serious, if you'll quit when it gets difficult. I'm serious, Maya had said, her voice tight. Then show him. Show all of them. So she did. She stayed after class every day, practicing cuts until her fingers bled. Literally, she'd sliced herself so many times those first weeks that she wore band-aids like badges. She studied Mandarin 4 hours every night in her tiny dormitory room, listening to podcasts while following along with textbooks, watching cooking shows with subtitles, copying out characters until her wrist ached and her hand cramped. She worked weekends at a dumpling stand in a hutong near the Forbidden City, trading labor for knowledge, learning the rhythm of a professional Chinese kitchen, the shouted orders, the clanging woks, the precise choreography of cooks moving in impossibly tight spaces. The dumpling stand was run by a woman named Mrs. Liu, who must have been 70 but worked 14-hour days without complaint. She spoke no English, which forced Maya to improve her Mandarin faster than any class could. Mrs. Liu taught her the feel of dumpling dough, how it should be soft but not sticky, how to knead it until it became silky, how to let it rest exactly 20 minutes before rolling it out. American girls have soft hands, Mrs. Liu had said, not unkindly, examining Maya's palms during her second week. You need strong hands for this work. We make them strong. After 6 months, Master Wang had nodded at her scallion cutting. Just a nod, no words. But Lin had grinned across the prep station. That's his highest praise, she'd whispered. He wouldn't waste a nod on someone who wasn't worth teaching. After 8 months, he'd let her work the wok station during a class demonstration. After a year, he'd started teaching her the advanced techniques, the dishes that required not just skill but intuition, not just technique but understanding. Peking duck, xiao long bao with their delicate, soup-filled centers. Hand-pulled noodles stretched impossibly thin. Lion's head meatballs. Beggar's chicken wrapped in lotus leaves and clay. Dishes that took years to master. Peking duck is about patience, Master Wang had said one afternoon, his Mandarin now mostly clear to Maya's improved ear. They were standing in the teaching kitchen, a whole duck laid out on the prep station. Americans rush everything. They want the crispy skin immediately, but the bird must be prepared properly. The air must circulate under the skin to separate it from the fat. The maltose glaze must dry completely, not mostly. The oven must be exactly right. Rush any step and you ruin everything. Patience is respect. Respect for the ingredients, for the technique, for the people who will eat it. She'd made it wrong 17 times before she got it right. The first attempt, she'd torn the skin while inflating it. The second, she'd overblanched it. The third, the glaze hadn't dried enough. On and on, each failure teaching her something, Master Wang's critiques becoming more specific, more useful. On the 18th attempt, he tasted a piece of the skin, chewed thoughtfully, and smiled, actually smiled, which was so rare that the other students had stopped what they were doing to watch. Good, he'd said. Not perfect, but good. Now make it perfect. It took another 30 attempts over 3 months. But when she finally got it right, the skin shattering like glass, the meat tender and fragrant, the balance of flavors exactly correct, Master Wang had called her over after class. You could have quit many times, he said in Mandarin. Most foreign students quit within 3 months. The ones who stay usually give up when they realize how difficult perfection is. But you didn't quit. Why? Maya had thought about it, searching for the right words in Mandarin. Because this matters, she'd said finally. Because my father loved this food. Because I want to understand it the way he would have wanted to understand it. Because... She'd struggled for the vocabulary. Because when something is worth doing, it's worth doing correctly. He'd nodded slowly. You honor your father, and you honor this cuisine. That is good. She'd worked at Quanju during her second year, learning the commercial scale version, how to manage 10 ducks at once hanging in the massive traditional ovens, how to time everything for maximum efficiency, how to carve the skin into exactly 120 pieces per duck while the customers watched through the glass. The other cooks had been skeptical at first, this foreign student in their kitchen, but skill spoke a universal language. After she'd worked 3 months without a major mistake, maintaining the brutal pace, they'd started calling her Xiao Mei, instead of the American girl, Little May. She'd treasured that acceptance more than any grade, any certificate. Master Chun, the head duck master at Quanju, had taught her the secrets that didn't appear in any textbook. How to select the best ducks by feel. How to adjust oven temperature based on humidity. How to tell by sound when the skin was perfectly crisp. How to sharpen the carving knife at exactly the right angle. The tourists come for the show, he'd said, watching her carve her 50th duck. But the Beijing locals come because they know the difference between good and perfect. Always aim for perfect. Even if only one person in 100 can tell the difference, that person matters. When she left Beijing to come home, Master Wang had given her a cleaver. His own, one he'd used for 30 years. The handle was worn smooth from use, the blade kept sharp through constant care. "You learn discipline here," he'd said at her farewell dinner, speaking in front of all the students. "You learn technique, but most importantly, you learned respect. For ingredients, for tradition, for the work. Now teach it to others. Good food is how we understand each other across all differences. You can be a bridge." She'd returned to Philadelphia with debt, skills, a cleaver, and a dream of opening her own restaurant. She'd had a business plan, potential investors, a location scouted in Chinatown. Everything was ready. Then her mother got sick. Stage 3 breast cancer, aggressive, requiring immediate surgery followed by 6 months of chemotherapy. Maya's health insurance from her waitressing job was minimal. Her mother's coverage had gaps. The bills started arriving, thousands, then tens of thousands, then more. Maya had postponed her dreams without hesitation. She'd taken the first job that paid decently and offered good insurance, waitressing at Chen's Bistro, ironically owned by distant relatives of the Chen Foundation that had partially funded her education. She'd started working double shifts, picking up every extra hour available. Her mother needed her. The restaurant could wait. When her mother went into remission 6 months ago, the relief had been overwhelming. Maya had started saving again, planning again, dreaming again. But the debt remained, and starting a restaurant required capital she didn't have. Until now, perhaps. Back in the present, Maya stood in front of the walk-in refrigerator, examining the ducks with the critical eye Master Chen had taught her. There were 3 Long Island ducks, which weren't the ideal breed. Beijing ducks were fattier with thicker skin, but they would work. She selected the one with the best skin-to-fat ratio, the one that felt right in her hands, and brought it to her prep station. 2.5 hours. She had 2.5 hours to execute a dish that normally took 2 days when done properly. She'd have to compress some steps, work with absolute precision, and trust her training completely. The kitchen staff had gathered at a respectful distance, watching. Word had spread, texts had been sent, calls made. Even the dishwasher, Carlos, had come out to watch. "Okay," Miguel said, returning with arms full of ingredients. "I've got the maltose, Shaoxing, everything you asked for. And I found this." He held up a bottle. 5-year-aged Shaoxing. Tom was saving it for something special. "This qualifies," Maya said. She examined the duck one more time, feeling the weight, about 5 pounds, which was perfect. She checked the skin, looking for tears or imperfections. Everything had to be perfect. "What do you need us to do?" Danny asked. "Just stay ready," Maya said. "I might need things quickly, and someone should probably check on that table every 20 minutes. Make sure they don't leave. Also," she looked at Miguel, "can you film this? Just set up a phone on a tripod. If I'm doing this, I want documentation. For me, not for them." Miguel nodded and started setting up. Maya took a deep breath and began. First, the cavity had to be cleaned and dried completely. Any moisture would prevent proper crisping. She patted the inside of the duck with paper towels, working methodically, checking twice. Then came the crucial step, the air. She made a small incision at the neck, carefully separating the skin from the membrane underneath. Using a specialized pump that Miguel normally used for brining, something she'd requested during her interview, one of the reasons Tom had hired her. She began gently inflating the skin. This was delicate work. Too much pressure and the skin would tear, ruining everything. Too little and the separation wouldn't be complete. She worked slowly, watching the skin gradually pull away from the meat, creating the pocket of air that would allow the fat to render properly during roasting. Miguel watched, fascinated. "What does that do?" "When it roasts, the air allows the fat to render out from under the skin," Maya explained, her hands never stopping their careful work. "That's what makes it crispy. Without this step, you get flabby skin. The air creates space for the fat to escape, and the high heat crisps the collagen in the skin itself. It's the difference between good and transcendent." She inflated the entire bird, checking by feel to make sure the air was distributed evenly. When she finished, the duck looked almost comically puffy, but that was correct. Next, the blanching. She brought a large pot of water to a rolling boil, added Shaoxing wine, ginger slices, and star anise. The aromatics would penetrate the skin during the brief blanching. The timing had to be exact. She submerged the duck completely for exactly 90 seconds, counting in her head the way Master Wong had taught her. 90 seconds, she said aloud as she pulled it out. 30 seconds too long and the skin toughens. 30 seconds too short and it won't tighten properly. There's no margin for error. She hung the duck to drain, then patted it completely dry again. Every drop of water had to be removed. While the duck dried, she prepared the maltose glaze. Maltose syrup, thick, viscous, difficult to work with, mixed with rice vinegar, honey, and a touch of dark soy sauce. The proportions had to be exact. Too much maltose and it would be too sweet. Too little and the color would be wrong. She heated it gently, stirring constantly until it reached the right consistency. Thick enough to coat but thin enough to brush on evenly. The glaze has to dry completely, she said, beginning to brush it over every inch of the skin with a pastry brush, working with the precision of someone painting a masterpiece. In Beijing, they hang the ducks overnight in a cool, dry room. The air circulation is carefully controlled. We don't have overnight, so I'm using the fan and hoping for the best. The glaze creates that mahogany color and adds a subtle sweetness that balances the rich fat. But more importantly, the sugar in the glaze helps the skin crisp. It's chemistry. She set a timer for 45 minutes, the absolute minimum drying time, and positioned the duck under the industrial fan Miguel had rigged up. While the duck hung, she started on the pancakes. This was muscle memory now, hands moving from experience. All-purpose flour, she'd have preferred high gluten, but this would work, mixed with boiling water. The hot water was crucial. It partially cooked the flour, creating a softer, more pliable dough. Most people use room temperature water, she said, kneading the dough. Her audience had grown, kitchen staff, plus Sarah poking her head in every few minutes with updates from the dining room. But boiling water creates a different protein structure. The result is softer, more tender. These pancakes should be delicate enough to be almost translucent, but strong enough to hold the duck and condiments without tearing. She let the dough rest for exactly 20 minutes, covered with a damp towel. Then she divided it into small balls, each one precisely measured. She'd made thousands of these, could judge the weight by feel now. The technique was specific, one Master Wong had shown her. Stack 2 balls together with sesame oil brushed between them. Roll them into a thin circle, then cook them on a dry skillet. After cooking, they'd peel apart into 2 separate pancakes, each with one oiled side. The oil created steam during cooking, which puffed them up and kept them tender. She worked methodically, rolling and cooking, building up a stack. The rhythm of it was meditative: roll, cook, flip, stack. Each pancake had to be perfect, thin enough to see through but not so thin it would tear. Sarah appeared again. Update. They're on their 3rd bottle of wine. The German guy is making bets with people at other tables. Also, there's like 40 people outside now with their phones pressed against the windows. Someone posted about this on Twitter and it's apparently trending locally. Also, Tom said a food blogger just showed up. Maya didn't look up from rolling the pancakes. Great. No pressure. But she felt it. The weight of those watching eyes, the phones recording, the potential for humiliation or triumph. Her hands stayed steady, though. This was what she'd trained for. Not the spectacle, but the precision. The performance was secondary to the execution. Master Wong's voice in her head. Cook for the one person who will know the difference. If you please that person, everyone else will follow. She cooked the pancakes in batches, stacking them and covering them with a clean towel to stay warm. Then she checked the duck. The glaze had dried to a tacky finish, exactly as it should be. Not perfect, not the overnight drying of a proper preparation, but adequate. It would work. Oven ready? She asked. For 150 degrees, holding steady, Miguel confirmed, checking the thermometer. She hung the duck on a hook inside the oven, positioning it carefully over a pan of water. The steam would keep the meat moist while the dry heat crisped the skin. This was the hardest part to get right. The temperature had to be exactly correct, the timing precise, the duck positioned properly for even heat distribution. 35 minutes, she said, setting another timer. If I've done everything right, if the temperature drops or spikes, if the duck isn't positioned correctly, if anything goes wrong, we'll know. There's no hiding mistakes with this dish. It's either perfect or it's obviously flawed. She prepared the accompaniments while the duck roasted. Scallions julienned into precise matchsticks, each one exactly the same size. Cucumber cut into similar matchsticks, but slightly thicker to provide textural contrast. The hoisin sauce mixed with a touch of sugar and sesame oil, tasted and adjusted 3 times until the balance was perfect. Everything arranged, ready. She'd prepared her mise en place the way Master Chun had taught her. Everything in its place, every element perfect before moving to the next step. The smell began to fill the kitchen, rich, savory, complex. Sweet maltose and roasting duck fat, 5-spice and crisping skin, the aromatics from the blanching water still clinging to the meat. It was the smell of Beijing, of Quanju's kitchen at peak dinner service, of Master Wang nodding his approval. Tom stood near the oven, watching the duck through the window. Maya, that smells incredible. I've never smelled anything like this in our kitchen. It should, she said quietly. It better. At the 15-minute mark, she checked the duck through the oven window. The skin was beginning to bronze, the glaze caramelizing. At 25 minutes, she opened the door briefly to check. The color was deepening to mahogany, the skin tightening. At 30 minutes, it was darker still, the fat rendering and dripping into the water pan below. At 35 minutes, she opened the oven fully and examined it with the critical eye Master Wang had taught her to use. The skin was crisp, glistening, the color of polished wood. When she tapped it gently with a spoon, it made a faint crackling sound. Perfect. She pulled it from the oven using the hook, letting it hang for exactly 5 minutes to let the juices redistribute. Then she brought it to her prep station and began to carve. This was as much art as cooking. She'd done this hundreds of times at Quanju, always with customers watching, always under pressure. Her knife was sharp. She'd spent 10 minutes honing it earlier, and her movements were precise. The skin came off first, carved into perfect rectangular pieces, each one crackling with rendered fat. 120 pieces, the traditional number, each one exactly the same size. The meat underneath was tender and juicy, still hot, the fat properly rendered. She sliced it thin, arranging each piece with care. When she finished, she had a platter that looked like it could have come from Quanju itself. Skin in the center, arranged in a spiral pattern, meat around the edges, pancakes to one side, the sauce and vegetables in small dishes, everything precisely placed. "Tom," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Tell them it's ready." The dining room had transformed. What had been a normal Tuesday lunch service was now something else. An audience, a court, a judgment. The table of billionaires sat at the center, surrounded by other diners who'd pulled their chairs closer to get better views. Outside the windows, a crowd had gathered, phones pressed to the glass. Someone had apparently posted the address online. Maya carried the platter out herself, walking slowly, steadily. The kitchen staff followed behind her, unable to resist witnessing the moment. The restaurant fell absolutely silent. No one even pretended to talk or eat. Every eye was on her. She set the platter down in front of Marcus with steady hands. "Peking duck," she said simply. "Beijing style, Quanju method. The skin should shatter when you bite it. You'll hear it across the table. The meat should be tender and fragrant, with no hint of gaminess. You eat it in the pancakes with the sauce and vegetables. This is Master Chef Wang Yonghua's method, exactly as he taught me." Marcus stared at the platter. His companions leaned in, examining the food with expressions ranging from skepticism to genuine interest. "It looks right," Klaus admitted grudgingly. "But appearance isn't everything." "Only one way to find out," Rashid said, reaching forward. Marcus picked up a piece of the skin with his chopsticks. He'd ordered them specifically earlier, Maya noticed. He examined it closely, held it to the light. The skin was translucent, glowing amber, thin enough to see through. Then he bit into it. The sound was audible across the silent restaurant. A crisp, shattering crunch that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet. Marcus stopped moving. His eyes widened. He chewed slowly, his expression cycling through surprise, disbelief, recognition, and something that might have been wonder or might have been dismay at being proven wrong. Tiana, he breathed. Oh my God. In Mandarin, unconscious. He put down his chopsticks with shaking hands, picked up a pancake, and assembled it the traditional way. Pancake spread with hoisin sauce, a piece of duck meat, a piece of skin, scallions, and cucumber, then rolled tight. His hands moved automatically, muscle memory from childhood. He bit into it. For a long moment no one spoke. Marcus chewed, his eyes closed, and Maya saw his throat work as he swallowed. This is... His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. This is exactly like Quanjude. Exactly like my grandmother's kitchen in Beijing. Exactly like... He opened his eyes, looking at Maya with something like shock. How did you... Where did you... You really did train there? I told you I did. James took a piece, tried it, and actually laughed. A startled, genuine sound of delight. Oh bloody hell. This is the real thing. This is actually the real thing. Marcus, you actually owe her $2 million. Carlos was assembling his own pancake, his hands moving quickly, eager. This is incredible. The skin, listen to it. He bit down, producing that same satisfying crunch. Perfecto. This is better than the place I went to in Shanghai. Klaus ate in silence, but his expression said everything. Eyebrows raised, eyes slightly closed, the look of someone experiencing something genuinely exceptional. Rashid had closed his eyes completely, chewing slowly, a small smile on his face. Around them, the restaurant erupted in applause. Someone whistled. Someone else cheered. Phones flashed, capturing the moment. Maya stood very still, letting it wash over her, feeling the validation of years of work, the proof that skill and dedication mattered. Marcus set down his food and looked at her directly. His face had changed completely, the smug confidence replaced by something more complicated. Embarrassment, certainly, but also what looked like genuine respect, genuine humility. I apologize, he said quietly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear. I made assumptions I had no right to make. I implied things about your abilities, about this restaurant, about American Chinese cuisine in general. This is exceptional. Better than most restaurants in Beijing, honestly. Better than some of the famous ones that rest on reputation. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling my bank right now. 2 million. No, Maya said. The word dropped into the silence like a stone into still water. The applause stopped. Everyone stared. What? Marcus blinked, his finger hovering over his phone. I don't want your $2 million, Maya said clearly. I didn't do this for money. Then why? Because you needed to learn something. Maya folded her arms, meeting his gaze steadily. You assumed I couldn't do it because I'm a waitress. You assumed this restaurant couldn't serve authentic Chinese food because it's in America. You assumed a lot of things without bothering to ask questions or consider that your assumptions might be wrong. That kind of arrogance is more expensive than $2 million. It costs you opportunities to learn, to grow, to understand the world as it actually is rather than as you assume it to be. The silence was profound. Even the street outside seemed to have gone quiet. Marcus's face had gone red. However, Maya continued after letting that sit for a moment, I will accept a smaller payment. $22,000. That'll cover my mother's remaining medical bills and let me start saving properly for my own restaurant again. Marcus nodded slowly, looking somewhat relieved to have a path forward. Done. Immediately. What else? An apology. A real one. To me, to this restaurant, to Chef Miguel and his staff who do excellent work every day, to Tom who took a chance on me, and to everyone you implied couldn't meet your standards without giving them a chance to prove themselves first. He stood up, and to Maya's genuine surprise, he bowed. A proper formal bow, from the waist, The kind she'd learned in Beijing meant genuine respect and genuine contrition. "I apologize sincerely," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the still silent restaurant. "To you, Maya, for underestimating you and questioning your abilities. To Chef Miguel and his staff for implying this kitchen wasn't capable of excellence. To Tom for disparaging his establishment. And to everyone here for my arrogance and my assumptions. This meal has been humbling in the best possible way. I hope you'll all accept my apology, though I understand if you don't." Maya felt something loosen in her chest, the tightness she'd carried for so long. "Apology accepted. One more thing," Marcus said, straightening but keeping his tone humble. "I'm in America for another week. Business meetings, conferences, and I've been dreading the food, honestly, because I've been disappointed so many times. Could you possibly prepare authentic Chinese meals for me during my stay? I would pay you properly, of course. Whatever rate you think fair. He gestured at the platter. "I haven't tasted home like this in months. Years, maybe." Maya considered. The request was humble, genuine, and the money would help significantly. "I could do that," she said, "but not here. My kitchen, my terms. And you eat what I prepare, no complaints, no requests. I choose the menu based on what's seasonal and what's best." A small smile touched Marcus's face. "I wouldn't dream of complaining. You're the master here. I'm just grateful you'd consider it." The video went viral within hours. Someone had live-streamed the entire thing, from the initial challenge to the final apology. It spread across platforms with different headlines. "Billionaire gets owned by Waitress? You won't believe what happened when he challenged her. The most expensive Peking duck ever. $2 million challenge goes wrong." But the version that resonated most, that got shared and reshared, was simpler. She proved him wrong. By evening, Maya's phone was exploding with messages. Job offers from restaurants in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, even Beijing. Interview requests from food magazines and local news. People she hadn't heard from in years reaching out to congratulate her. The Beijing Culinary Institute shared the video with a caption in Chinese. "Our students exceed all expectations. We are proud." Master Wang sent her a message at 3 a.m. Beijing time, which meant he'd stayed up to watch. "You honored the training. You honored the tradition. Most importantly, you honored yourself. Proud of you, Xiao Mei. Your father would be proud too." She read it 3 times, blinking back tears in the employee bathroom. Mrs. Liu from the dumpling stand sent a voice message in rapid Mandarin. "I always knew your hands would become strong. You showed them. Now come back and teach my granddaughter." Lin, her friend from school, called her directly. "Maya, oh my God, everyone is talking about it here. You're famous." Master Wang showed the video in his advanced class and said, "This is what dedication looks like. I'm so proud of you." Tom offered her the position of head chef at Chen's Bistro, immediately with a significant raise and profit sharing. Miguel volunteered to work under her, grinning. "I want to learn what you know," he said. "Not just Chinese cuisine. I want to learn that level of precision, that level of skill. Teach me." But Maya knew what she really wanted. 3 days later, she met with a commercial real estate agent to look at spaces. The 20,000 from Marcus had arrived. He'd actually sent 25 with a note. "For your mother and your future. Thank you for the lesson. It was worth far more than this." Over the next week, she prepared 6 dinners for Marcus and his business partners. Each one was a different aspect of Chinese regional cuisine. Sichuan, mapo tofu that made them sweat, Kung Pao chicken with the perfect balance of heat and sweetness, Dan Dan noodles with her own hand-pulled noodles, Cantonese, delicate steamed fish with ginger and scallions, perfectly executed char siu, clay pot rice, Shanghainese, xiaolongbao with soup so hot and flavorful they had to wait before eating, red braised pork belly that melted on the tongue, drunken chicken soaked in Shaoxing wine. Each one, Marcus told her, was perfect. "You're not just cooking," he said after the Sichuan dinner. "You're teaching. Every dish is a lesson in balance, in technique, in history. I'm learning as much as I'm eating." On the last night, as she was packing up her knives and containers, Marcus approached her with an envelope. "What's this?" she asked, immediately wary. "An investment proposal. I'd like to back your restaurant. Not control it, you'd maintain majority ownership and complete creative freedom. I know my presence might feel complicated given how we met, but I've spent my whole career identifying talent and potential. You have both in abundance. Let me help make it happen faster." Maya opened the envelope. The number made her breath catch. Enough for a space, equipment, 6 months of operating expenses, everything she'd need. "Why?" she asked carefully. "Really why?" "Because I've learned something this week," Marcus said. "I've learned that assumptions are expensive, but good investments pay off. This is a good investment. Also," he smiled self-deprecatingly, "I want to be able to eat here whenever I'm in town. Selfish reasons too." "I need to think about it," Maya said. "Of course. Take your time. The offer stands." She talked to her mother, who was in tears. "Baby, this is what your father dreamed of for you. Take the money. Build something beautiful." She talked to Lin in Beijing, who was practical. "He owes you this. He tried to humiliate you publicly. Now he's making amends. Take it, but keep control. Don't let him dictate anything." She talked to Master Wang, who was philosophical. "Money is just a tool. What matters is what you build with it. If he gives you the tool without demanding you build what he wants, then take it. Build something that honors what you learned. Build something that serves your community." 2 months later, Maya's restaurant opened in a small space in Chinatown. 40 seats, open kitchen, simple decor that let the food speak for itself. She called it Xiao Mei's, Little Mei's. The name honored both her training and her identity, both her past and her future. The opening night was packed. Master Wang sent flowers with a note in Chinese. A good student honors her teacher by surpassing him. "Surpass me, Xiao Mei." Marcus came, bringing his business partners and a food critic from the New York Times. He sat quietly, ate every dish and left a generous tip. The review that ran the following week called her cooking transcendent and a bridge between cultures, built on a foundation of absolute technical mastery and genuine respect for tradition. But Maya's favorite moment came 3 weeks after opening, when a young black girl came in with her parents. The girl stared at Maya in the open kitchen, watching her work, watching her hands move confidently across the cutting board, watching her taste and adjust and perfect. "Mommy," the girl said, loud enough for Maya to hear. "She looks like me." "She does, baby," her mother said. Maya caught the girl's eye and smiled. Then she gestured her over and, with the parents' permission, showed her how to fold a dumpling. The girl's hands were clumsy but eager, her expression intensely focused, her tongue poking out slightly as she concentrated. "Can anyone learn to do this?" the girl asked, looking up at Maya with wide eyes. "Anyone who's willing to work hard and practice," Maya said, gently adjusting the girl's finger placement. "It doesn't matter where you come from or what people expect. It matters what you're willing to learn, and whether you're willing to keep trying even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." The girl nodded seriously, carefully pinching the dumpling wrapper closed. It was lumpy and imperfect, but she'd made it herself. Maya steamed it specially and brought it to the family's table. The girl ate it with enormous pride. That moment, Maya thought as she returned to her kitchen, was worth more than any viral video or Billionaire's apology or New York Times review. It was the moment the story truly came full circle, not ending, but beginning again with someone else who might one day prove the world's assumptions wrong. On the wall of her restaurant, Maya hung 2 things. The cleaver Master Wang had given her, displayed in a glass case, and a framed screenshot from the viral video. The screenshot showed her standing calm and dignified in front of Marcus's table, platter in hand, and she'd added a caption she'd written herself: "Never let anyone else define what you can be." Every day, as she cooked, she glanced at it and remembered that Tuesday afternoon, not with bitterness, but with gratitude. That moment of being underestimated had become the catalyst for her dream becoming real. That challenge, meant to diminish her, had instead revealed her. And every day she made Peking Duck. Not because anyone challenged her or offered millions, but because she'd learned from the best, worked 3 jobs to afford that learning, crossed oceans to gain that knowledge, practiced until her hands bled, studied until her eyes burned, pushed herself until she understood not just the technique but the philosophy behind it. She made it because it was authentic, because it was excellent, because she understood that excellence, real, earned, proven excellence, spoke a language that transcended every assumption, every prejudice, every limitation others tried to impose. She made it because she could, and that, in the end, was the only proof she ever needed. The only validation that mattered was the one she gave herself.